Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Weekly Waypoint. Today we are playing MotorStorm, a game which I have been wanting to play for nearly 20 years. In fact, you know what, I have been wanting to play it for 20 years because I read previews of this game in gaming magazines. Oh, I made myself feel old. Right, we'll get into why we're playing this in a minute, but look, this is still, to me, the quintessential next generation video game, right? Like, so much marketing, at least in my memory, around the PlayStation 3 was centered around MotorStorm because it was meant to be this technical showcase of like, look at not only what the graphics can do, but also the physics. Like, you can see the dirt in the, like, the tracks in the dirt here. It affects the physics of what you're actually driving on, and that was a big thing. That was the first time anyone had ever done that. It is actually not rendering in very well in this instant. We'll get into why that is as well. But, yes, MotorStorm. I've been wanting to play this game for a very long time, and would you believe it? It's a pretty fun game. Maybe it's not, like, system seller worthy, but it's definitely a fun visit. I'll probably play some more of this. But yeah, MotorStorm. Why are we playing MotorStorm? Well, I kinda went on a bit of a journey this week after Sony announced that they were gonna discontinue physical media from 2028 onwards, and that from next year onwards, I think it's about a year from now, the PS3 PSN store is going to shut down and you'll no longer be able to buy digital games. And while MotorStorm is not a exclusively digital game, it is a game which has a physical edition which is probably going to go up in price pretty drastically secondhand now that you won't be able to buy it digitally. Now, it's old news at this point, right? I just happened to record the Weekly Waypoint at a point in the news cycle where, you know, we're all pretty well aware of everyone's thoughts on this, and it seems to be a pretty universal, like, negative response. I'm not going to say anything new here, and I'm going to try not to go on about it too long, because I'm sure you've already heard lots of people go on about it. I've actually written a blog post over on kritigri.wordpress.com, which kind of puts all my thoughts into order, and it's a little article that you can go and read over there. I called it, Sony aren't just killing physical media, they're missing what it means to be human. And it seems like I struck a chord because it has 231 likes on Blue Sky, which is quite a lot for me. So it's weird to say I'm happy about that given the circumstances of what the post is actually about. But yeah, John Cartwright of Good Vibes Gaming reposted it, and I'm very grateful to him for that. But yeah, it sucks. Sony killing physical media sucks. It's bad for consumers and consumer rights because Sony now have complete control of the market and pricing and all of that. It's bad for game preservation because, as we're seeing with the PlayStation 3 store shutting down, there's going to be digital exclusives which are lost to time outside of preservation efforts, which kind of go against Sony's like end user license agreements, I imagine, and stuff like that. It gets all weird grey area legal stuff when it comes to game preservation, which it really shouldn't be, but lawyer's gonna lawyer. It's bad because last week Sony announced that they were deleting movies that people had bought in their PlayStation libraries due to the end of a licensing agreement, so they've already proven that they're not to be trusted with a digital license that you do not technically own any of your PlayStation games digitally. It's the same on Steam, but Steam's a little different just because Steam aren't the reason why PC gaming is digital, you know what I mean? Like, it's still not ideal, but I think Sony are a little bit more guilty here. But I don't actually have a PS5, I'm not really in the PlayStation ecosystem right now, so that blog post was a little bit of me exploring just why I feel so angry about this move. And long story short, it's the continued enshittification of gaming, and corporations just, you know, viewing art as a product and viewing artists and game developers as you know, like cogs in a machine to make them money, you know, like they clearly do not care about the industry and the people who enjoy video games and stuff. For years, like all my life, I've been watching this art form, this hobby, this form of media get consistently more and more heavily monetized and more scummy business practices. I'm not going to rant for too long, but yeah, That's why it made me so angry, even though I don't have a PS5, and I'm definitely not going to get a PS6 when they announce that. And so, how did this lead into me playing MotorStorm? Well, I kind of thought to myself, you know, there is a part of me that has been holding on for a port forward. That's not what port forwarding means. For a new port or a new remaster of old Ratchet and Clank games. You know, ideally on PC, but they nixed porting games to PC a couple of months ago. That's a whole other thing. But if not, then, you know, maybe PS4 and PS5, right? But I realized at this point I might as well do it myself. So for the first time, I've dipped my toe into PS3 emulation, and I have been emulating PS3 games, all that I already own, of course. Because if Sony are gonna kill the PS3, I might as well do it myself. I might as well do my own one. And I've thought to myself, like, the PS2 is hard enough to emulate, like, the PS3 is surely going to be impossible. And I think for a long time it was, but as you can see here, this is footage from an emulator. And like I said, there was that texture which didn't necessarily load in properly, and if you don't have the right settings on, you'll get some hitches. Like I noticed if you have adaptive VSync on, usually it's a pretty bad time in terms of performance. Full VSync though is a pretty smooth ride, in, you know, based on the games I've played so far, which is the Ratchet and Clank HD trilogy, Ratchet and Clank Tools of Destruction, and MotorStorm. Those are the 3 games I've tried so far. And yeah, as you can tell, like, it still very much looks like a PS3 game. It's got that kind of grainy 720p 30 FPS look to it. I think it is meant to be upscaling to 1080p, but I'm not sure that's actually happening here. Either way, I'm happy to play it in its native resolution if that's what it wants to do, because, you know, that's what it would look like if I was playing it on my PS3, which I do still have. This is a bit of an exercise in laziness and just convenience, right? Of like, I would just like to be able to play them from my PC, and if I can do that without the experience being impacted in terms of performance or visuals, then I might as well do that. And so far, it's going pretty well. So, you know, if Sony aren't going to look after you guys, go ahead and look after yourselves. That's all I'm saying. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to emulate the PS3, because I don't want to run afoul of any corpo algorithm stuff, but it's, you know, it's a little bit more complicated than older consoles, but it's, if you follow the instructions correctly, you get it down pretty quick and it's not too bad. Now, I did mention I've been playing the Ratchet and Clank games on this. I haven't tried to emulate Ratchet and Clank 1 in a while, but that is a notoriously difficult game to emulate on the PS2, but so far, I've had a pretty good time emulating the HD version on PS3. It might actually be easier to go that way. But yeah, it's nice that it performs well enough that I just kind of forget I'm emulating it in the first place, and it just feels like I'm playing it on my PC, which is real nice. I'll probably have some gameplay clips of my time with it in the next miscellaneous shenanigans at the end of the month. But also I'm contemplating doing a playthrough, like a wrench-only challenge mode, which is what some people like to do, where you're not allowed to use any of the guns, and you just try and use your melee attacks on every single enemy. Feels like Ratchet and Clank 1 would be one of the easier titles in the series to do this with, but it would be pretty fun to do that. I would probably want to do that in more of a Let's Play format. I hesitate to say live stream because I don't know how well it would run alongside the emulator. I don't quite know how many resources it would take up doing both things at once. And also, I'm just not really in the live streaming mood lately, but I could see myself doing it almost like planet by planet, right? Like, here's a probably 12-minute video of me going through Novalis on wrench only. I feel like that could be pretty fun. I have a terrible track record with actually seeing these things through to the end, but if I just do it on a level by level basis, I feel like that's almost a little bit more excusable, because then I'm not saying here's part 1 out of question mark, I'm saying here's this planet in a wrench-only run, you know, that's pretty fun. And I wouldn't have been the first person to do it, but, you know, why do I do anything on this channel? I do it for my own amusement. So let me know if that's something that you think would interest you. Ratchet & Clank is one of my favourite game series of all time, and I've still yet to really do anything with it on the channel, so that could be a cool thing. I did also mention that I've been playing Tools of Destruction a little bit for the first time. I've had a little bit less success in emulating that one. The frame rate isn't quite as consistent, and I did get a freeze, unfortunately, at one point. But for the most part, it's been a pretty fun gameplay experience. There's definitely been more playable than that one time I tried to play a crack in time over PlayStation's cloud streaming service. I don't know if I'm going to stick with Tools of Destruction right now, but I'm glad to know that I can just play it if I would like to, because I actually never finished that game. I was so excited at the prospect of playing a game where I could hunt for achievements when I first got my PS3, or trophies I guess, that I did end up skipping forwards to a crack in time, because Tools of Destruction and A Quest for Booty were before trophies were invented, as was MotorStorm, I believe, to bring it back. But emulating games isn't all I did this week. I also played... Okay, so last week I talked about a bunch of deals I picked up in the Steam Summer Sale, so you may be wondering what ended up being the result of that, you know? Like, I was playing a little bit of everything. What's the one I really stuck with? And that would be Starfield. I've done almost nothing but play Starfield this week in terms of, you know, playing video games. To the point where I made the very painful decision that I said I was probably going to have to make of uninstalling Assassin's Creed Shadows, a game I recently bought and was actively playing and enjoying, so that I could move Starfield to my internal SSD, just because while the hitching was bearable, it was impacting my experience, and I was really getting deep into Starfield, and I actually finished the main story for a second time this week. I originally did that back in 2023, but I've done it again. And it's interesting because I've seen people say, like, you know, oh, the main quest line is ass, just play the side stuff, play the faction quest lines. I actually really like the main story quest line, and I swear I'm not being contrarian. It doesn't do anything crazy new in terms of science fiction, but it does utilize the medium of being a video game to a fairly unique extent in the experience that it offers at the end of a story, which I think is pretty cool. Also, it was just interesting enough for me the first time around to want to see the answer to the mystery it was presenting me with, and in my opinion, it was an interesting enough answer. Like, it didn't answer absolutely everything that it set up, but it was, yeah, it was fine. It was fun. It was a good time. And I think the main thing to note here is I didn't set out to just play through the main questline in Starfield again. In fact, this time around, I told myself I was going to allow myself to get distracted. I was going to allow myself to play the game more quote-unquote organically. I wasn't going to go in with any particular plan, but what I did end up doing was just playing through the storyline again. Now, in my original playthrough, I romanced Sarah, and then in New Game Plus, I romanced Barrett. But this time around, I didn't romance anyone. However, my main companion this time around was Andreja, and I think in my New Game Plus I am going to romance her if she is down. I'm also playing a female character this time around, which doesn't really change much of the experience, but I just thought that was worth mentioning. Whereas before I was a pink-haired man called Quoth Quadgley, now I am a blue-haired lady named Nora Marlowe, and fun thing about that name is Vasco has Marlowe in his voice banks, so if you talk to him he goes, Captain Marlowe. And I have to wonder if they included the name Marlowe because they know that the protagonist of a popular science fiction book series at the time has the last name of Marlowe. Do you see me, Bethesda? Or is this just a coincidence? But yeah, without giving too much away, I was going to, just chain New Game Pluses over and over again to see, like, what changed over and over again, because there are small differences to each save file. But I realised that was starting to kill my enjoyment of the game, this idea that I shouldn't get invested in any one quote-unquote save file because I'm going to lose all my inventory or whatever, or most of my inventory, as I start another New Game Plus, and like I shouldn't try and invest my relationships in any of the companions and stuff. I realised I don't think it's worth it, so instead of doing that, I'm just going to stick with my New Game Plus save and build that out to be like the save file where I do all of the faction quests, and I do I want to, like, I don't know if there's any actual incentive for doing this beyond, you know, credits and XP, but I do want to, like, get into scanning a bunch of star systems, and yeah, just like really exploring the settled systems in a way that I've never done before. Previously, I think I went about this the wrong way. In 2023, I told myself what I was going to do was do main questline, new game plus, faction questline, new game plus, faction questline, new game plus. And again, having that in the back of my mind had me going like, well, I shouldn't get too invested in any one save file because I'll be resetting a bunch of stuff soon. So actually sitting down and going, this is the save file. I'm not going to reset this. This is going to be where I stake my claim and make my home. I have the stuff that New Game Plus gives you, and I have looked into what continuing the New Game Plus route will do for me, and I don't think it's worth it. And just knowing that this is the save file, I suddenly feel way more invested in continuing my Starfield journey, so, you know, I'm probably going to be playing more Starfield over the course of at least the next week and talking about it in the next weekly waypoint. I do want to do a big write-up at some point about why I love Starfield so much, because there might be some people listening to this going like, really? Starfield? Because it has such a poor reputation that I do not think is deserved, but there are, you know, very fair criticisms to be made of the game at the same time, and why do things work for me that don't work for other people. So, you know, just like I did a write-up over on my gaming blog post about the physical media stuff, I do also want to do a write-up over there about Starfield at some point when I have the time. But for now, that's all I've got to say on the game. The other thing I did this week is I resubscribed to World of Warcraft, which might be a bit out of left field, because haven't I been going on about the fact that I don't think I'm all that invested in Midnight, even if it's, you know, at least the 12.0 story is like something that I was really interested to see before it came out, and so on and so forth. Well, I'm not playing retail, I'm playing Classic. Specifically, I'm playing Mists of Pandaria Classic, which is interesting because, I don't know, I just had a hankering to level a character, but I didn't want to deal with retail, and I didn't feel like leveling through, like, Burning Crusade era Classic, with, you know, like, some quests being really difficult to solo, or taking ages to get the items for, and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, sometimes I am in the mood for that, but this time around, I just felt like leveling a character in a familiar experience as the game was when I started playing, like in Mists of Pandaria. So I have made a dwarf paladin. She is named Bronda, and I have rolled a character on a realm which I did not realize has been inhabited, I suppose, by the French. Nothing wrong with the French, but there was nothing on the realm list to indicate that Orbadine was a French realm, and I was like level 20 the first time I looked at the looking for group chat and was like, why is everyone speaking French? Oh. But you know what? That's fine. I wasn't really intending to get into a community experience this time around, and so it's fine. I kind of like seeing an active server without dealing with, like, you know, toxicity in chat because I can't read French. Is it a little bit sad that I have ended up in that headspace? Sure, but you know, I guess Warcraft gonna Warcraft. And the last thing I want to mention today is that I'm recording this on the heels of having watched this week's episode of House of the Dragon. I'm not going to talk about the episode because this isn't Kritigri Talk Stories, and you might not have seen it and you might not want spoilers. All I'm going to say is, if you haven't come back to House of the Dragon for Season 3, which I almost did not do, you should, because the first two episodes are basically what should have been the finale of Season 2. They are, like, very action-based. They are really fucking good. And then this week's episode, Episode 3, is another just absolute banger of an episode, in my opinion. It's not action-based this time around, really, but it's very character-focused, and it's so interesting, and Emma Darcy deserves all the awards. That's all I'm gonna say. Anyway, we are coming up to the end of this video, so I'm gonna wrap it up. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you liked this video. Leave a comment down below letting me know anything you want. And have you ever played this game? There you go, there's a call to action. And I'll catch you on whatever I make next.